John Christopher Depp II, and News Group Newspapers, and Dan Wootton. Witness statement of Joshua Drew. I, Joshua Drew, of Los Angeles, California, say as follows. I am a hospitality development consultant. The facts and matters set out in this statement are within my own knowledge and belief, unless otherwise stated, and I believe them to be true. Where I refer to information supplied by others, a source of information is identified. Facts and matters derived from these other sources are true to the best of my knowledge and belief. I make this statement in support of the defendant's defense in these proceedings. I met Amber Heard and Johnny Depp when I started dating Raquel Rocky Pennington. Rocky and I later got married but have since divorced. I was deposed on the 19th of November 2019 in John C. Depp v. Amber Laura Heard civil action number in the circuit count of I was deposed on the 19th of November 2019 in the John C. Depp v. Amber Laura Heard civil action in the Circuit Court of Fairfax County, Virginia. I attached the transcript of the deposition as a true record of it. I first met Amber in June 2014. I met Johnny sometime soon after that. Rocky was living at the East Columbia building at that time, in one of the apartments next to Amber and Johnny. I met Johnny shortly after at their home. Over the course of 2014-2015, I was a regular visitor at the East Columbia building. Rocky and I were engaged in the summer of 2015, and later that year I moved into the Eastern Columbia building with her and remained there until after the incident on the 21st of May 2016. Over this period, I spent a lot of time with Amber there. I also saw Johnny regularly and spent time hanging out with them both. I've had very limited contact with Amber in the past 2 years since my divorce. I have not been in contact with Johnny. I consider myself to be independent from both parties. I understood from our interactions that Johnny was jealous. Rocky told me, based on her conversations with Amber, that Johnny had a particular issue with James Franco because he and Amber had some intimate scenes in a project they were filming, which Johnny did not want her doing. His name came up often and it would cause fights between them. They were arguing about it very regularly. Johnny was using drugs during the period I knew him, opioids and ecstasy. From time to time, I saw him take various drugs. He wasn't always sober and he had private treatment to try to remain sober. He was often drinking to excess. I overheard them fighting. For example, during a trip to France, I heard Johnny shouting at Amber about a role she had done. Johnny was shouting about a nudity rider in the film that she claimed was fraudulent, and he accused her of knowing about and going against his wishes to include it. I knew from what had been discussed with Rocky and Amber that Johnny had demanded that Amber stop doing nudity in her films and that she cut down on intimate scenes with co-stars. Rocky told me about various fights they had over the years and said that Johnny was jealous of Amber's co-stars. Amber called Johnny the monster when he would get angry and yell at her or hurt her. I was aware and had been told about incidents in which Johnny had hit Amber, most likely by Rocky, and I observed there to be a significant amount of empathy among Amber and Rocky and a genuine belief that Johnny's drug and alcohol use. Amber called Johnny the monster when he would get angry and yell at her and hurt her. I was aware and had been told about incidents in which Johnny had hit Amber, most likely by Rocky. I observed there to be a significant amount of empathy among Amber and Rocky and a genuine belief that Johnny's drug and alcohol use caused his behavior and that he would somehow lose control. The 2014 plane incident. This took place before I met Rocky, but I subsequently heard about it after the incident on the 21st of May 2016. Rocky told me that Johnny had kicked Amber on the plane after a flight about one of her projects. Rocky told me that Johnny had kicked Amber on a plane after a fight about one of her projects. Rocky said that Johnny had blacked out on the plane and had cried when he was later told by his assistant, Stephen Dudas, that he had kicked Amber. 2015, Australia. Rocky told me what Amber had told her about this incident, that there had been a huge knockdown, drag-out fight and that, in the course of it, Johnny had cut his finger off. 15th of December 2015, Los Angeles. Rocky was due to meet Amber that evening, and when she hadn't had a response to her text messages, she let herself into Penthouse 3 to go looking for Amber to check on her. I went with her and we found things out of order. With things strewn across the kitchen, I remember seeing the words, "Why be a fraud? All is such bullshit," written on the countertop in handwriting I recognised to be Johnny's. Rocky told me that something wasn't right and sent me home while she looked for Amber. About 10 or 15 minutes later, I received a message from Rocky saying something like, he beat the shit out of her again and told me she was looking after her. I remember being told that they had reached out to a nurse to do a concussion check. Rocky told me that there was a big fight and that Johnny had headbutted Amber, ripped out pieces of her hair and smothered her, and that they had to call Dr. Kipper's office to get Amber a concussion check. I also talked to Amber about it. I saw Amber that night, and the next day saw her injuries. She had bruising around both eyes which extended down the bridge of her nose and her forehead was red. I remember her being terrified about how she looked because she had to appear on TV that day or the next day, and her injuries were visible, but she couldn't pull out of it. Melanie Iglesias, her makeup artist, was brought over to try to cover up the injuries. I was with Rocky when she took the pictures of Amber's injuries. 21st of April 2016, birthday party in Los Angeles. We had a birthday party for Amber for her 30th on the 21st of April 2016. I catered the party. Johnny turned up hours later and Amber was making excuses for him. He turned up eventually and was clearly intoxicated. He was slurring and swaying a bit. Amber seemed upset about him showing up late and drunk. The next morning I heard about what had happened after we had all left. The thrust of it was that there had been a big fight after everyone had left the party. 21st of May 2016, Los Angeles. I was with Rocky in the apartment we lived in, Penthouse 5, with Liz Mars. We were made aware that Johnny was coming over to see Amber, and I remember Rocky being concerned after the incident after Amber's birthday party that she should be. I was with Rocky in the apartment we lived in, Penthouse 5, with Liz Mars. We were made aware that Johnny was coming over to see Amber, and I remember Rocky being concerned after the incident after Amber's birthday party that she should be there to support Amber. Amber told Rocky just to be around and that she would text her if there was a problem. Rocky received a text message to go over and help Amber at 8:06 p.m. and she bolted over there. I did not observe what happened but learned about it shortly afterwards from Rocky and Amber. Shortly after I heard a large noise, when I later discovered was the sound of a wine bottle being slammed into our door of Penthouse 1, I heard Johnny shouting and swearing at his security guards to let him in. He came in and was shouting and screaming at me, cursing right in my face. I left calmly. Liz was still in the apartment, but I saw her bolt upstairs to hide from him. I don't recall exactly the sequence of events. Amber was in a state when I located her and Rocky. Rocky and I ushered her into our apartment. By this time, Johnny had left our apartment and we deadbolted the door to keep him out and keep her safe until Johnny had left the building. Rocky told me that Johnny had shoved her. I got angry and went outside and banged on the door of Penthouse 5, but he had already left. I then went back to Penthouse 1 to talk to Amber and Rocky, and I heard more about what had happened. Amber had Johnny's phone and I took it from her. She told me that she had thrown it at. I went back to Penthouse 1 to talk to Amber and Rocky, and I heard more about what had happened. Amber had Johnny's phone and I took it from her. She told me that he had thrown it at her and hit her in the face with it and left behind. I was told that Io had been on the phone with Amber and Johnny to talk about Johnny's accusation about excrement being left in his bed. At some point, while Io was on the phone, Johnny had hit Amber in the face with the iPhone and Io had called the police. I later learned that he had wound his arm back and thrown the cell phone into her face. Rocky went over there and got between Johnny and Amber to stop him hitting her. About 5 minutes later, his security officer, Jerry Judge, called my mobile and told me his boss had left his cell phone and asked me if I knew where it was, and I told him that I hadn't. They wanted to come back to get it, and I said they could come back to get it, but words to the effect of they could not set foot in the building. I met Jerry downstairs and gave him the phone. I took a few steps to walk away and then turned and asked me. He took a few steps to walk away and then turned and asked me, "Is she okay?" I said something like, "Are you fucking kidding me? He beat the shit out of her again and you guys stood by and watched it." He started to demur and then said something along the lines of, "It's not his business. They are husband and wife. He barely touched her." I said something to him like, "Get the fuck out of here. Be real proud of yourself. Get the fuck out." Rocky called Amber's lawyer, Samantha Spector, to ask her what we should do. We were told to make a contemporaneous note of what had happened. We went back into their apartment and took pictures of the damage. Amber also called her publicist, Jody Gottlieb. Later, I greeted the police officers who arrived about 15 minutes later and showed them around the apartments. I showed them broken glass, walking past a large wine stain in the hallway. I showed them various damage to the property. A wine bottle dent to the door of our apartment, Penthouse 1, then a tour of Penthouse 5, where there was broken picture frames, smashed glass, and Rocky's jewellery and other things strewn across the apartment. They acknowledged that something had clearly happened. I watched a female officer take Amber aside and speak to her privately. As the female officer was speaking to Amber, I spoke to the male officer. I asked him what could be done, because we were obviously upset about what had happened. He told me that there was damage in the apartments and Amber's face was red, so there was enough to pick Johnny up if she filed a report. I told him she was not going to file a report, but that I appreciated what he had said. As the officers left, they told me Amber had declined to give them a report. After this, we cleaned up some of the broken glass in Penthouse 3, and that was on the kitchen floor, so the dogs wouldn't be hurt. Other things, like piles of books strewn about, was left. After this, we cleaned up some of the broken glass in Penthouse 3 that was on the kitchen floor, so the dogs wouldn't be hurt. Other things, like piles of books strewn about, we left as it was. I greeted the second set of police officers who arrived and told them there had already been a police visit and showed the business card. They said that they had to do a check of the property. I took them for a walk through the apartment and they spoke with Amber in private. The next day, Rocky had a jewellery show, so I cleared my schedule so I could be there to help Amber if she needed it and to be there. Next day, Rocky had a jewellery show, so I cleared my schedule so I could be there to help Amber if she needed it and to be with her so she wasn't alone and so I could be sure she was safe. I remember seeing the marks on Amber's face, a red mark and small bruise on her cheekbone, and red marks just above her eyebrow. She also had some swelling. I understand that Johnny has submitted a statement in the US libel proceedings to the effect that I said Rocky had lied about where she was before Amber texted for her help at 8:06 and that she was in fact hiding in Penthouse 3 waiting for Johnny to return. This is false. I never said this to Johnny. Statement of truth. I believe that the facts stated in this witness statement are true. Signed, Joshua Drew. 2nd of the December 2020.